Are you willing to change your plans on the spot to take on advice from others and say, okay, this is what I was thinking about. This is what it needs to be. So let's flip the switch. Let's turn things around and go do it. Well, have you been changing things lately this drastically? Have you ever considered changing things because other people have asked you to do certain things and you realize this is the only way to actually move on? Well, that's what I have been doing this last week. So, some of you know that I have been talking about the Park of Pride, Power, and Perspective. Pride, as in the ones who are visiting it, the park, will be proud of themselves. Power, as in they are empowered, and perspective, they get perspective again. But here's the kicker: I've changed the name to the Parks of Purpose, Power, and Perspective. And actually, I did so today. And why did I do so? Because this is not just about one person or a few people out there. This is about something which goes beyond, well, let's say it's global, it's international, and it's for the entire future generations. That's what it's meant to be. So, what am I talking about? When I talk about purpose, the purpose is to be inclusive. The power has to do with both empowerment and sustainability. And then we have perspective, and perspective is things are going to change for the future generations onward. Now, if you're wondering, Lexi, what are you talking about? Then you probably missed some things, and I could say to you, well, how about visiting the other behind the scenes looks, as in the videos? But, well, let me tell you a little something. So for a while now, I have been thinking about setting up the Parks of Pride, Power, and Perspective. Now, Purpose, Power, and Perspective. And my idea was to set it up for neurodivergent young ones, so gifted young ones out there, and include a children's hospice and have business owners come over to get a better understanding when it comes to clear communication. So basically that's coaching as in rewriting their inner story, but also working with micro meetings and step changes on the spot. So by the time they leave the park, they are like, oh, I already had this result and that result, and they actually can experience the change. Now, this week, I have been talking to the people from the Great Impact. I was supposed to be talking to them last week. I was not feeling very well last week. I was sneezing, coughing, you name it. So they postponed it till last Monday. And then there was a big surprise. So first of all, and that's why I started with what are you willing to flip if that's needed, they said, we don't want a conceptual plan. We want a project plan with timelines and everything. I was like, oh, okay, that's different than what I expected. But here was the other thing, and I was not too amused when I heard that one. They said, don't mention us because we won't be partnering up. So what will you do? Well, we will stack the funding for you. Of course, we expect you to bring in funding too, and then we'll look for funding, but we're not going to partner up. My conclusion, what I need are partners. I need partners to go pull this off. And actually already have the first one, and I'm very proud to say so. So that's a local undertaker. He was there when my dad died and later on when my mom died. So I sent him a message. I said, are you also equipped to handle children's funerals? And he said yes. So I explained to him that I'm setting up these parks, and one of the things that I want to do is make sure there's a children's hospice. So why a children's hospice? Well, first of all, children who are terminally ill, they end up either with the elderly or with the young ones who are not terminally ill. So in order to actually support the parents and the siblings in a better way, I want to create, well, an experience is a big word, but on the other hand, it is correct if I say an experience, because I want them to be able to leave a legacy where they sorry, I was a little thrown off with what just happened. I'm just going to leave it there, but maybe this will help. Let's see. No, I like this one better. Okay, so because they get a chance to leave a legacy behind by recording their message, and that message is going to be so important, not just for them. I'm not entirely sure how aware they are of leaving the world and what they want to say, but what I know for certain is that when the siblings are getting older, they probably won't be able to remember the voice of the young one, their little brother or sister. And especially for the parents, it's kind of nice to have something that they can hold on to. Now, moving on, the whole thing started with the gifted young ones. I don't know if you know this, but for a decade now, I have been supporting the gifted young ones. And I remember the day that I was driving one of those young ones home. And I said to him, if you ever need to talk about things, then you come and find me. It took him years, and then at some point, there he was, and I'm guiding him to get perspective back again. The good news is a lot has happened in the last couple of years, and well, we are moving forward one step at a time, but perspective is there again. And for a long while, we haven't been able to say so. Now, he's not the only one who hasn't had perspective at some point or another. And especially for those who are on the spectrum, but also the ones who are not heard, seen, and understood because they think differently. So the neurodivergent ones out there, often gifted, they need support. They need support to be able to do what it is that they would like to do to contribute to society, because no one just wants to stay at home. I mean, if they do, and sure, we can be hermits, there probably is a reason for it. And well, what I know from the ones that I am helping out is they didn't plan on staying at home. They plan to be someone who could function in society, and they have been denied that possibility. So a week or three weeks ago, I suppose, I saw this opportunity to actually get a grant for my ideas of the parks of now purpose, power, and perspective. I had about 48 hours, a little over, not enough time to set up any plan. I did have 3 phases though. And when I couldn't talk to them directly because of the cold, I started coming up with all these ideas. I started reaching out to other people, hence why I got the Undertaker to join me, because he can help with both connections, but also material and what's needed for a child's funeral. Because, well, they are small, so it's a totally different ballgame compared to when you're an adult. And then we're not even talking about I think you call it the perinatal birth. So basically, the mostly first time moms, you expect to see their midwife to deliver the baby, a healthy baby. And then prior to seeing them for the delivery, they find out that the heartbeat is no longer beating. So how do you deal with that? That's where he comes in. Now, I shared with you, this is for the gifted young ones, the neurodivergent young ones. And that also includes getting people to come over, business owners who have trouble communicating with their team. But there's also a very other side to all of this. So one of the things that I said from the get-go is I want this park to be able to sustain itself. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be fully sustainable by itself, but we can do a lot of things. And boy, did I come up with a number of ideas, not just by me. I did check also with Google AI, but basically I throw something at Google AI and then all of a sudden I get answers. So one of the things that I said from start is I want solar panels on there, movable solar panels. Why? Because we want to store energy. And there's going to be a lot of energy involved, especially when we're talking about monitoring and all those kind of things. We are talking about what if we use tiny houses? They're often made of wood, and that's going to be cold in the winter. So we want extra isolation. In the summer, we want it to be cool. So we want movable panels. Apart from that, we want to say, okay, let's use the research to grow plants and vegetables and other stuff over there, which we can use to eat, basically. And what's left when it comes to compost, so what we cannot use anymore, how about if we recycle that? So we use a special kind of heating system that is built using compost. Now, the cool thing about this is that a lot of those things are mechanical, as in you can watch them, because I like them to be where it can be observed by, yes, the gifted young ones. So the ones who do not fit in normal school systems because they need some extra challenging. Well, how about if we show them what's possible? So let's have those brains rattle a little bit and think about what's optional, and also already see that they are included in society and they are heard, seen, and understood, and we are there to support them. So that's just a fraction of when it comes to sustainability, but it's a very important one. And when I talked to the people from the Trend Impact, they said what we love about this project is that you want it to be both inclusive, and you want to support a part of society which otherwise would fall between the cracks. I think that's what you call it. And otherwise, it's about sustainability. And well, if this works, I want to roll out parks all over the world. Let's face it, that's what we want. And of course, there's the communication aspect too. And well, then we basically get back to the inclusivity, because what I realized not too long ago is that a lot of the gifted ones, so the neurodivergent ones, so the ones where the brain is actually different, it's literally wired differently, and that's why there are miscommunications between one and the other, because when you're neurotypical and you're talking to someone who's neurodivergent, you might be thinking like, why are they waiting so long to answer? Well, they probably won't know. Next. Well, that's not what was the goal. The goal is we are thinking about your answer and then we come up with the answer. And the answer might actually be very surprising to you. So there's a big gap between neurodivergent and neurotypical people if you are not used to it. Now, of course, neurotypical or neurodivergent can be very different too. So it's important to always ask repeat back to see if you have understood the other one the way they are supposed to know. If you have understood the other one the way that they wanted to get their message across, and of course the way that you wanted to get your message across as well. So communication is key when it comes to these kind of things. Now, whereas I had thought about a lot of things, including, hey, there are like 70 container units elsewhere, and I think there's a location which can be very suitable. What I didn't think of was a timeline. And again, I did have a number of phases in mind, but then they said, well, we need a project plan. And I was like, oh, yeah, I gathered as much that there should be a plan. But then when I started working on it, there were so many parts which were important, because a children's hospice requires nursing staff. You want to be close to a hospital if that's needed, or maybe there's a doctor on call or on site, but at least you want a nursing post to be there so they can keep an eye on everything. But since we also want young ones to see what's going on and to learn from early on what they can mean when it comes to being part of society, and also to figure out how certain techniques work. We are going to work with AI in that park, and there's a lot of tech that will be going on. So it's about challenging the young ones as well. So if there's an observation post for them to see how certain things work and maybe to interact with either the patients or the parents or the siblings, then it's nice if there would be an option to do so. Now, of course, in order to get that done, I need a lot of help from the technical people out there. And well, we want, especially the young ones who are going to the technical universities, to be the ones to use this as projects when they are, well, for internships or whatever it is that they need to do. So let's combine the things and let them participate and come up with new technology and see what's already there and what can be changed. Now, depending on what is available, so it might be that there are actually 70 container units available. We are going to need circa 32. But they will need to be transformed. Why? Because we want movable walls for tiny units or container units will be put together, and it will be like a hospital ward, one big room where the nursing staff can come together. But we also want it to be able to be separated, so it's only part of the unit which involves the parents and the siblings as well. So that's two separate units. And of course, the nursing staff should always be able to see what's going on and monitor what's going on. So that makes it 4. Now, if we are going to use the container units, well, that's going to be interesting, because how are they going to rebuild those? The good news is, if they're available, then let's go and see what can be done. If they're not available, then we are going straight for the tiny houses, but then we have to find manufacturers, and we still need to see how certain technology can be applied, which means partnering up with universities, schools who know about these kind of things, maybe also younger ones who need to do their internship, learn to communicate with others, work on assignments. And then we haven't even addressed the AI part, because all those moving parts, well, they need to be instructed, and either they're going to move them manually, which is kind of nice for the ones who are learning to explore technique and what things look like. But there's also going to be digital instructions, as in that AIs are going to make sure that certain things can move. So let's press the button and let's go. Or maybe we have an entire iPad with an app on there, and we can actually really get into each unit or whatever it is, device separately, and then just see what we can do to manage it the way it should be done. Sort of like with the lighting systems that you see when we get to Chicago PD on set. If you see what they can monitor and control, it's amazing. So I guess it can be compared to what you actually see when it comes to Chicago PD and they are recording. We actually want a sort of similar setup. So let's make it night when it's daylight, and let's make it daylight when it's night. Let's make sure that there are power trucks available, or in this case, we want batteries to be present. So if things go off grid for some reason, technical malfunction or maybe nature has its toll, then they can go on for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So that's going to be a nice challenge. And just to come up with something I realized today. So I had a discussion with Brendan AI, that's the AI from Brendan Burchard, and I said, I have a car and it runs on LPG and on gasoline. I said, I prefer that over electricity. I said, we have a shortage of electricity. That's the way it is. So I'm no fan of charging poles which use clean energy. So hence why we want to use compost to recycle energy. We also want to catch rainwater. There's a lot of things that we want to do to leave the least bit of footprint on this earth. So when you think about electricity, I said, those cars, those electric cars, when they catch on fire, it's often very dramatic. It takes them I think 5 days to actually have that thing stop burning. So they have this huge sort of pool nowadays, and then they lower the car in there, or at least the battery of the car, So it no longer can reignite again. And then, of course, there is what if those cars are no longer used? What do you do with those batteries? So I asked Brennan AI, isn't there something that they can do to, and he called it a second life, to give the batteries a second life? Because if we want solar panel batteries, which will last for 3 to 4 weeks, well, then how about reusing those? And well, so that's going to be something that we want to ask the students of the various universities as well. So the way I look at it, this is going to be something that is going to be across borders. So for instance, and that's why I'm also asking for partnering up. In March, I am going to be in San Diego. Why San Diego? Well, first of all, Brendan Burchard is giving training about AI, but second of all, there is the University of San Diego over there, and they are specialized in neurodivergent young ones. So they have done research and have been studying them. What is it that they need to work best? And they have their very own unique skills. And that's one of the reasons, besides that I want them to have perspective on an individual level, but I also want this to be broader so that younger generations, the future younger generations, have more perspective, even if it's just because of sustainability, but also because they're treated differently with respect, seen for who they are. It's so important to focus on that part. So there are a lot of things that need to be figured out, maybe are already there. And I want to do research and talk to the people of the San Diego University. So for those who are going to partner up with me and will be joining me for the San Diego experience, please note, we also will be visiting the UCSD because we want to see what's going on there. I mean, this is about being at the forefront of inclusivity, about being at the forefront for the future generations. So if you want to be there and partner up, expertise, connections, funding, ideas, material, you name it. Well, here we are. Now, talking on, I realized that the project plan is actually something that needs to be there. I mean, I can understand that if you want to partner up, that you want to see what this is all about and what is going to happen. But I do want you to be involved. So what I heard this week when they said, well, we'll help to stack funds, but we won't be a partner in all of this, that's something that I was like, oh, but that doesn't feel good. And I don't know about you, but if you were to be working with someone and they say they are going to help you do certain things, but at the same time they say, but we are not going to be partnering up, what does that tell you? And how do you feel about that? So, like I said, I'm not too thrilled. And I was like, well, if it's just about stacking funds, maybe I can do a few things myself when it comes down to it. Now, of course, there is going to be way more that needs to be done. And well, the timeline basically depends on what's available and what's not. After that meeting, I didn't feel very energized, as you might expect. So I got to talk to a friend of mine, and we talked on, and that's when all the ideas came flooding back in. And one of the things that I actually talked about was, well, I know that there is, well, there are a number of businesses, but also collaborations to be more inclusive. One of the examples that I have seen and that made quite an impression on me, and it still makes an impression on me, is there have been two people who are on television. One is called Loretta Schrijvers. She passed away last year. But what I loved about this, so she was on The Masked Singer. She was in the panel, and she was always, we loved her, from the moment that she was, I think she started out in the news and then some other stuff, but she was this bright, sparkly personality. And they made it possible for her to stay on till the very last moment. So what did they do? They put beds, I think there were stretchers or anything. So they would have them behind the screens. So she would be able to lie down if needed. Right now, there is another one. He's called Martijn Krabbe, and loving father of a number of children, happily married, as far as I can tell. What do I know about him? Well, what I do know is he's stage 4 cancer, so he doesn't know how long he has. But he has the support of that same television station as well. I was like, wow, isn't this amazing? Because how many employers do you know who actually support those who have trouble being there for a total work week, say it's a 40-hour work week or anything, and what if they need to take a break? So when we talk about the neurodivergent young ones, what I don't think I shared this, so what I didn't share, and I'm going to see if I can put this elsewhere because it's making a lot of noise and I cannot handle that very well. It's very distracting. Yeah, that's something that a neurodivergent might notice. So I'm one of those people who turns off the sound from the keyboard of the phone. I mean, why should it make sounds? And besides, I feel it's very disrupting when I'm in a different setting. So a lot of the neurodivergent ones, the ones who are wired differently, they also are, well, wired differently. Physically is not the right word, but like me, they are hypermobile, which means that we need more time to adjust to certain circumstances. Life is a little bit different. We probably need some more sleep. And a lot of us are very hypersensitive, which means that when things come in, they come in. The brain needs to process certain things, and how to do that best? Well, by sleeping, basically. When we sleep, the brain gets the chance to actually process what's going on. And I've always been one of those people who I can do a lot of things, and I can do them in a very short amount of time, but I need quiet and peace. So during the day, I would talk to people, I would get these ideas. At some point, I would leave the building with people. We would talk on, but I wouldn't be sitting behind the computer. I would do that when basically most people had left, and then I would go and get those things out there. So basically, my time when everyone was around was for meetings, but it was also for some downtime. And when you know that people are more productive when they have more downtime, well, that's going to change things now, isn't it? And so going back to the two presenters, TV presenters, they got the chance to be their shiny, bright, sparkling personalities right up till the end. They were not written off. No, they were embraced, and they were given the possibility to attend when they wanted to. And I mean, how amazing is that? And if we could make it possible for the young ones out there who need some more support to actually be surrounded with options similar to these, then wouldn't that be amazing? So basically, in my mind, in the park, there are already people working. One is teaching the young ones out there about uh, everything related to audio and sound, because, well, we do have a studio there, and we do have a stage where the person who's being coached will be witnessing literally the rewriting of their inner story by seeing the past, the present, and the future depicted around them. And of course, that requires their own live song. So that's one of the things that we also need local musicians. I mean, I can write a thing or two, but I'm not a professional musician. So we need professional musicians in order to do so. So, which is a good thing, because it's kind of hard to make a living when you're a musician, unless, of course, you are widely known and you have full arenas that you can, which are sold out. And basically, then you also need to be touring most of the time. So I was talking about, what if you need to shift everything in order to get things done? Now, first of all, I already told you, I had this plan for a long time. I didn't really think about what it would look like, except for the legacy tree, which has the 3D stars for the tiny young ones that we lost, and the stepping stones, as in stars, for the business owners who have rewritten their story. And of course, the neurodivergent young ones, the gifted ones, to be able to work there, have perspective. And by talking to those people and having to write something up in, well, 48 hours, things immediately shifted, and I still see what was happening. I was like, okay, I'm going to be the go-to expert for the gifted ones out there. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do master studies starting September. And then this came around the corner, and it was like, okay, so this is what happens when you throw something into the universe. But of course, a dream is a dream unless you take action. And I realized that by writing down the plan, getting a structure, that things are really going to make a huge difference. So that's what I've been focusing on. Now, again, the timeline varies depending on what's available. We're talking about locations. We're also talking about units. We're also talking about how much time does it take for the students at the universities to build something that's usable, and how much needs to be in place already in order to start creating that park. So I was thinking, if we had to start with a number of units, especially the ones with movable walls, then it would probably be those 4 units which are related to the terminally ill young ones. And the goal, of course, is that they can be monitored together by the nursing staff. And then I was like, okay, so next would come the parents and the siblings, because we want them to be there. Do they need to be tiny houses straight away? No. Do they need to have a floor on top of it? So we basically want another layer on there, which cannot be too high, by the way, because they still need to be able to transport those tiny houses. And then, of course, there are rules when it comes to the size and the height and the surface of those tiny houses. So I was like, okay, so what can be done? What cannot be done? And one of the things that I would love is if they would have a glass roof on top of it. So there would be another floor where people could go to observe, see certain things, and they would actually be able to see the night sky, just to name something, but also to feel the sunlight on their skin if they're allowed and if they want to. So we want to give them as much of an experience of being close to nature as is possible. Of course, more to it. Like, hey, what if we want to take them to a different building, to the stage where things can be done? They need to be able to be transported too, and we don't want that to be done out in the cold. But we have to start somewhere. And so there are so many little things that need to be shared and discussed and talked about. And I was like, okay, I don't need to do this alone. This is something that I might be the one who has the ideas and is the driving force behind all of this. But what I basically need are partners who have ideas, who have connections, who know about certain people, who already know certain technology, or they know where certain research is being done. Now, of course, I also will be needing to do some research myself. I think I need to come up with a research paper, in order to attend the university for becoming the expert by lived experience this September. So, yes, if I can do research and see if what I have in mind when it comes to changing things, well, I want to say changing things on the spot, but let's say if you come with me to San Diego, or you get there to the park when it's there, the goal is to have you change things within the 5 days that we spend together, and then you're going to work on the one thing that's the most important for you. We're going to work on step changes, on micro meetings, and then by being forced to take action and by also brainstorming with other people and really being vulnerable about, this is what I don't know, or this is what I've tried. What can I do differently? That's the way support works. And then we can see if there are other options, and we can work together to make it a success for you. And of course, for everyone who is involved. And one of the things when I started out was, I was like, well, this is about the older generations and the younger teams. So moving forward, I was like, oh, this is about Gen X with the millennials and Gen Z, or maybe also with other Gen X people. And then I realized, oh, hang on. But actually, the millennials and Gen Z, They might be starting up their own companies. I mean, we are in an age of IT, and so much more is possible. So thinking on, I was like, okay, so one of the things that I've noticed is impatience. So when it comes to the Gen X, they are so used to figuring things out themselves that they don't understand why other generations are not doing so. And I'm not saying that is true for everyone, but we do know that when it comes to social skills, and I'm not going to say that the social skills of Gen X are that amazing, but we didn't grow up behind gaming computers, just looking at the gaming computer while the others were in the room playing the same game. Yes, we had gaming computers and they couldn't be shared. Well, when you were done with your game, then of course someone else could play the game, but we weren't capable of playing games together, not back then, at least. So of course, we've had COVID, which also had a very huge impact on social skills. And you can tell by the way the Gen X people talk versus the Gen Z people. And well, just check the latest generation, Gen A, as in Alpha. Well, they're a different breed. And of course, depending on how much, well, I'm not going to say how much time the parents spend because that's not true. But I do believe that parents can make a big difference in how the children are raised. And of course, that's also linked to how they were raised themselves. So this is kind of like a generational thing. And one of the things that has been disturbing is they expect a lot. And of course, they have been taught to expect a lot. And I'm talking about the young ones. But if you were raised by, you start from the ground upwards, as in you learn. When I was in IT, we started with what we called sticking paper and throwing open reel tapes. So basically, it was putting open reel tapes, those big ones, which literally could be opened and closed. They had to be put on the unit in order to process data. We can't imagine that anymore, but that's the way it was back then. And we had what we called chain paper, so they had these little holes in there, and so they would be guided on the printer. And well, paper needed to be replaced, it needed to be cut. So those who printed something would get their own stack of paper. And I still remember that there were loggings, and it was this thick bunch of paper with lines all over there. And that's when they knew, like, oh, this worked or this didn't work. And we need to rerun the whole thing. So you would start somewhere and then you would specialize in certain things. And yes, there's some nostalgia in my voice. Yes, that's correct. So just a question for now. So up till now, what have you thought about all of this? I mean, I've been talking about inclusivity, the gifted ones, about the children who leave us way too soon, about impatience. And so I was talking about the impatience from the Gen X people who are like, why can't you figure things out yourself? And why are you not resourceful? Also not knowing how to express themselves with clarity. So they are very good at repeating themselves using the same words. We don't want that. If you are going to repeat yourself, then use different words, use different language, use metaphors, whatever is needed for clarity. but be specific. And that's why it's so important to also ask, like, hey, what did you get out of it? And what are you going to do? So, the other one has actually understood what it is that you are after. So last week I talked about the ask and what you are after if you do the ask. And so if you want to know more about that, then go to the YouTube channel and find the one from last week. Now, when we talk about the younger generations, and I'm not going to say that as Gen X and boomers we are excluded from that, but have you ever seen those little tiny ones who learn to walk and wobble over to the television, and then they start swiping on the television, and of course that's not working, not yet, because they're so used to iPads and being able to swipe. I mean, I've seen these kids, those young ones, while they are in their buggy, and they got an iPad. Like, okay, go watch it. Don't interrupt me. Let me do my thing. And I'm like, this is crazy. All of us are standing here in line, and there's a lot of noise. Why? Because one is watching a cartoon, and it has to be done with full volume. Anyway, we're good at swiping because, especially on social media, there's so much going on. So in order to find what it is that you actually want to see, it's swipe, 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 swipe. I'll honestly say I go to YouTube every now and then. There's something that might catch my attention, and I'll press it's not an actual button, but if you go to the middle of the top on YouTube, then it goes times 2. So I'll hold my phone and I'll have it like going fast forward. Or I will actually go and scroll forward, like, okay, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, is there something that's interesting for me? Because one of the things, and I generally do not like that, is they put a thumbnail out there, which has nothing to do with the video, but that's the way that they hook you. And, well, I try to read the description. Does that make sense? And a lot of things are actually interesting. Not everything, by the way. But it does require a correct description that's real and which is relatable. So basically, we swipe all the time. So we judge, we make decisions. This is interesting, this is not interesting, this is interesting, this is not. And we don't have much patience for waiting. It's sort of like when you see a little kid at the pancake restaurant and they are hungry and they want food. When is the food coming? Why is it not there? Mom, I'm hungry. Dad, I'm hungry. Why is the food not there? You must have witnessed that, probably not once, but more like 100 or 1,000 times. And that's, that's basically what it is like right now. We are so used to only focusing for a few seconds on something that we are not good at taking time out for things. It's something that we really need to learn again. And one of the goals of the parks are that those who actually need that processing time also get the processing time. And one of the goals that I actually want to show to business owners is the importance of taking a break, so your brain actually can process things way better and is far more efficient. And it also makes a lot of difference when it comes to your own energy. Now, if you are still here, that means that something about this entire story related to you. If so, then my question is, would you like to be partnering up with me? So what I said, uh, I'm looking for research, locations, connections, but also people who want to join me in San Diego. So if you want to be at the forefront of these parks of purpose, power, and perspective, and you believe in giving the young ones out there a better future, then how about supporting me and partnering up with me? Partnering up means co-creating. So I'm asking for a few things, and one is some time from you, because I want you to be invested in this, as in it matters to you. And then, of course, you probably have access to resources that I don't, or you might come up with ideas, know about things that I do not know about. So let me know what's there. And well, if you are willing to partner up, then I, in turn, will also do some things. So, depending on what you're willing to do, there are possibilities to get a free system scan. So, I will talk to you for about 20 minutes and, well, maybe a little bit longer if that's needed. But we are going to talk about what is it that you actually need, what's going on in your business, what could use some changing and or improving. And then depending on what I find, I'll write something down. And well, if you want to hold on to the recording, I'm going to ask you for a little something. If you want to join me in San Diego, then you'll have the chance to go on a 5-day trip with me. So during 5 days, we're going to work on something within your company starting day one to figure out what are the step changes that you can make, the micro meetings that you can make. We're going to listen in on your conversations so we can actually share with you this is what's working, this is what could use some improvement, and then hopefully by the end of the week you know better what to do and what not to do. Now, of course, if you want a full year of coaching, that can be done too. And again, depending on how you want to partner up, you can go for a full year of coaching, or you can do it differently. You get the full year of coaching. It's all up to you. But here's the thing. It's going to take place in March. And in order to make the arrangements for it, this needs to be decided upon as in the next week. So there's not much time left. Also, when it comes to project plans, other people want specifics from me. So the sooner I get information, or the sooner you want to partner up, or maybe you can help me get to San Diego so I can get the research, go to the research facilities, preferably with you, and also sign up for what's going to be my assignment to actually do the master studies. Well, that's going to be exciting. It's really going to be exciting. But, all for a more inclusive future for the young ones out there, for the future generations. So if you believe in all of this, then find me, leave a comment, or either go straight to LinkedIn. I might put a description in there, or go to either Facebook or Instagram. So on Instagram, you can find me, Lady Lexi Speaks Up. So let me know how to reach you. And if you go to Instagram, you can straight away DM me, say founders, and I'll reach out to you. If you're just excited about this as I am, and you want to know more, then do me a favor, leave a comment and share this with people who are interested in this too, who could use being heard, seen, and understood, who could use some support for either themselves or their children. So let me know, leave the comment, and reach out to me, reach out to others. Let's make this a more inclusive place.